Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 799. So I guess I was a bit rusty when I played this game because there were a lot of mistakes. If you want to go back and look at the original video and see if you can spot the mistakes and the missed tactics, it might be a fun exercise. Anyway, I'm going to do the postmortem now. I started off with d4. My opponent went knight f6. So it's all pretty normal through the opening. I go c4, he goes e6, and I go knight c3, allowing the Nimzo Indian, if he wants to play it, which is the top choice there. Our second choice would be d5, just transposing into a queen's gambit declined. He plays the third choice there, which is the Benoni. It's a very sharp opening and dangerous for black, but black gets counter chances too. It's a very tactical opening. Anyway, pushing on with d5 is really the only way for white to claim any sort of opening advantage. Moves like knight f3 are still good. Maybe I exaggerated there, but d5 gives the biggest edge to white. So the normal move is to take, and then just play d6 there. Prevent that pawn from moving forward any further, opening up a diagonal for the light squared bishop. And then I went with e4 right away. You can play with knight f3, and that's the actually the main move. You can see that's the top choice. But this particular move order that black chose allows the immediate e4, and with the idea of following up with f4. So that's the plan, is to not develop that bishop until you've got the f-pawn move in. Black continues with g6 here, setting up his dark squared bishop on that nice diagonal, and I go with f4. Once again, knight f3 transposes into pretty decent lines actually for white, but f4 is definitely the most exciting way to play. I think the chess engine actually prefers knight f3, but anyway, this gives all kinds of ideas in the center, pushing on with the e-pawn, sometimes with the f-pawn to undermine over here. Let's see, he goes bishop g7, and I went knight f3. Knight f3 was not the top choice here, although I think it's not a bad move, but the book move here is kind of interesting too. At this point, I'm really out of book in terms of my own knowledge. I was just improvising, but looking at it later, knight f3 is a reasonable move. But let's look at this bishop b5 check line. So you give the check, and the normal move is to block with the f knight. And I have seen this idea before. I just hadn't played this position in a while, so I guess I had forgot about this idea. The problem is if he blocks with the knight, the other knight, then you can push on, and well, this pawn is protected, and the knight here is blocking the bishop, so this pawn is protected. So he has to find a home for his knight. It gets pushed out here to h5, and then you could push on with e6, and this is a pretty dangerous position for for black. Although the chess engine does not give an outright win, but it gives an edge to white. Notice that black has counterplay. Black always gets some counter chances with this opening. So queen to h4 check. You know, it's a possibility that you could play g3, and he could sacrifice his knight to try and win the exchange in the corner. Anyway, lots of stuff could happen from here. It's kind of a crazy position. So they don't normally play that way. They normally go with knight f to d7, retreating this knight so that e5 is actually e5 to e4 is actually not a good move here. And then the main move is a4, which I didn't understand at first. I was looking at this trying to figure it out. If you drop the bishop back to d3 immediately, which was the second choice there, then no, I'm sorry, if you don't, if you just leave the bishop there, because why are you retreating the bishop? If you just play knight f3, which seems like the natural move, then black can play a6, kicking the bishop back, and then he gets in b5. So the point of that a4 move, if we back up, in this position, the top choice is a4, and the idea is that, well, say black castles, you get in your knight f3 move, which is a move you want to play anyway. It also prevents the queen from coming out here and giving you a check. Then if he goes a6, you can retreat the bishop to d3, which is a good square, and b5 is prevented by the bishop and the pawn here. So that's the point of that a4 move. And anyway, this is seems like a nice way to play. So that's the let's go back to this position. This is a position in the game where I played knight f3. So the idea is bishop here check, black retreats his knight, and pawn to a4. And I think that's how I would play this next time around. But it turns out the immediate knight f3 is not a bad move as well. It still keeps an edge to white and prevents the queen from coming out and causing trouble. So black castled here. And now I went a4. And the main move here is bishop e2, and we will see why in a second here. After a4, so this is like the first of my blunders. The early knight f3 was still okay, but the a4 in this particular position is a definite mistake, and white has, well, black has a tactic here. I guess it's buried a couple of moves, but if you want to pause and look for tactical ideas for black here, see if you can spot one. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. Well, black starts with this rook e8 move, and then you defend the pawn with bishop to d3, or you think you've defended it, and he can just take that pawn anyway. That's the idea. After you take back with either piece, he has this f4 move to claim that piece back. And so black has succeeded in busting through the center, getting his rook out to an active post. So that is the problem with playing a4 right here. I need to actually deal with this threat of rook to e8 and really just winning that pawn. And the recommended move is bishop to e2. Then there's various ways I can defend it, but the main idea is that I've interrupted any potential pins along the e-file, so he's not going to get in that f4 and win a piece back trick. Okay, so anyway, I went a4 and he just went a6. So in this part of the game, and we see this pattern throughout the game where I will blunder and he will blunder back immediately, just not taking advantage of my mistakes. And at the beginning, I think it was because he was moving really fast. He was just blitzing through these moves. This is a fairly slow time control. He really had time to think even from the beginning. But later on in the game, he also seemed to be repeating that pattern even when he had slowed down. So anyway, lucky for me, but definitely black had many chances in this game. Let's see. So now I continue with bishop d3. I mean, after this pair of mutual blunders, white is better again. And the attack continues. Let's see, he goes rook e8, and I castle, so no more tricks along the e-file. He goes knight bd7, I go rook e1, he goes knight to h5. And yeah, I just kicked that knight back with g4. It took me a long time to find this move because I just wasn't sure what to play here, and it's not the most natural move for me to push those pawns forward. But I think it's in the spirit of this opening. You want to throw those pawns forward around the king, and it's a good move in this case because the knight really has no squares to go to and just has to go back. And you kind of want this knight to be stuck here so that you can get in this e5 push at some point. Let's see. So at this point, I needed to defend the g-pawn, so I played h3. He went knight to b6, bringing the knight out over on the queen side. And here I pushed on with e5. And once again, there's a situation where this is just a blunder. I'm not quite sure what I was thinking, but after e5, I can just take this pawn, and there's no big threat here. Yeah, I'm just down a pawn here. I guess maybe there may be some tempo moves with the bishop, but it looks like nothing great is going to happen here. Oh, let's see. He should take first. Yeah, the most correct way of playing this is to take first, and then play knight takes d5. Yeah, like I said, this is just fine for black. He's got a pawn up. He's won a pawn. My remaining pawn in the center is kind of weak, and I don't have any great follow-up here. There's no, let's see, that's defended twice and attacked only once, so there's no great discoveries here with the bishop. I mean, I can play moves like this to harass that piece, but that'll just lead to further exchanges. So I think that was pretty simple. I don't know why he played that way, but for some reason he went with knight takes g4. And so once again we have a pair of blunders where I blunder and he blunders back. And this is not as bad a move as it looks on the surface. He gets lots of compensation, but with correct play, white is still better after this. So I take it, he takes. So if we pause to count, he's got 2 pawns for the piece. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's 5 pawns, 7 pawns. But I'm also going to lose another pawn here in the center, or maybe 2. I think at some point I am actually, I'm actually 2 pawns down. So let's see. I played King F2 to defend my knight and also to open up this file for the rook. I thought I would bring my rook over to harass his bishop. So another mistake. And there's a... is this the place where... no, it's not here. Well, oh yeah, it is here. Okay, so A5 is the move the chess engine wants to play, kicking this knight back. So that's a good general purpose move. But the clever idea is the second move here, rook to A4. And the rook is looking at the bishop along the rank here instead of looking at it along the file like I was planning. So the chess engine likes this idea of harassing the loose piece here. And notice it's indirectly protected that e-pawn, because when I take back, it's with a tempo on the bishop, and that'll give me some time to push that pawn forward further or otherwise defend it. So it's a way of indirectly protecting my center. So it's kind of a nice trick. Let's see. I went King F2, defending the knight, freeing up my queen, and opening up this file for the rook to come over and harass the bishop. But here he once again can just take in the center. And let's see, if I bring my rook over to harass his bishop like I wanted, he can play this F5 move. And once again, I'll end up being just a piece down. I guess I can take off his dark squared bishop in this line, but he's a piece up, and I've got a weak center pawn here, so definitely better for black. Instead, he just took the knight off immediately. And yeah, I took back with the queen. Good active square for the queen. And once again, I'm better. Okay, so he goes queen h4 check. I block. This is helpful, actually. Just going to the endgame for me is makes this a little easier to win. So trades queens and takes. And then let's see, I went bishop d2. Looks like, yeah, bishop d2 gives away another pawn. So I was sort of letting, I think I still keep some edge after that, but the best move here is to play f5 so that I don't just trade this pawn off, and I have the idea of holding on to some of these other pawns. So I can trade my f-pawn, but I don't just give it away. Let's see, after bishop to d2, I mean, you want to develop too at some point, but well, he just takes here, and then he grabs the knight and takes this pawn. So at this point, he's 4 pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns for the piece. But well, I have the bishop pair against a knight. And actually, as the endgame progresses, the bishop pair is really very strong. So this position, I think, is still favorable to white, even though technically the 4 pawns are more than compensation for being down a piece. Anyway, I pull the bishop back to d2. Let's see, he went rook e to d8. Okay, he's preparing to set up some kind of skewer along here, and I played bishop to c4. So this is the point. There's a very simple tactic here, and I think he was maybe slowing down at this point. He really should have spotted it. But anyway, you guys should spot the tactic. So pause the video if you want time to think about it. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. So he set up a discovered attack against this loose bishop here, and you know, whenever you have a discovered attack, you should just look for every possible move of the piece, and there's only 8 legal moves. Yeah, are all 8 available? Yeah, all 8 legal moves are available, and one of them actually wins, and that's this one, because now you've got a double attack, attacking this bishop, and yeah, I would just be losing here. So I blunder, and he blunders again with knight to f6. So we've seen this pattern 3 or 4 times by now. I make mistakes, and he fails to punish them. So anyway, I continued with the bishop to h6. He went knight to h5 check, king h4, and I'm just trying to avoid walking into these skewers like this one here. Fortunately, at the moment, it's protected by the pawn, but it's kind of a tricky situation. I'm also trying to set up some kind of back rank tactic here. Let's see, he opposed rooks, and I went ahead and traded. I think this endgame is still good for me with the bishop pair. And then let's see, now he is threatening this. His rook is threatening to come out here and fork those two pieces. So I drop my king back to h3, and he goes rook e4 anyway. And let's see, slightly better than that would have been the knight check, because this basically, oh, well, this is a clever tactic too. After I take, he gets it back with this fork, and he eliminates the bishop pair this way. So this gives black more chances. Now let's see, he went rook e4 immediately, and I could have played the move rook to d1. Didn't have to move the bishop immediately. And the chess engine gives some complicated lines after this where it thinks I am winning, but I didn't find it entirely convincing. It's not a simple win anyway. So bishop d5, I don't think that's a mistake. Let's see, he dropped his rook back to e7. Another idea I had was to bring the rook over here and gang up on the on that f pawn, which is pinned. But he's got that defended now, so I go rook to b1 and harass the b pawn, and he can't save this. So this is how you win if you have the pieces against the pawns. You try to pick those pawns off one at a time, and he can't actually save that. I've got two pieces on it. If it comes forward either one step or two steps, it'll be traded on b5 there, and then I'll take, or I'll just take directly on b6. So the pawn cannot be saved. He doesn't have any great counterattacking moves either. He goes rook to d7, and I just took here. I was taking advantage of the fact that he can't take my bishop because that would lead to mate there, so he just traded rooks. And now with the bishop pair and versus the knight, and he's only got 3 pawns, this is a winning endgame, and I should go on to win it. Let's see, he goes a5. I go bishop to a6, looking to stop his pawn from coming forward. Goes knight to g7, and here's where I make my final blunder. I was talking all throughout the last part of this game here about how great the bishop pair is, and certainly that's the way to play this. I wasn't sure how to make progress over here on the queen side, but just block these pawns on dark squares. Let's see, the chess engine gives knight back here as the best move. The knight's kind of far away. There's no good way for the knight to come over here and defend, apparently. Yeah, I mean, well, the knight could come here, but the bishop can go to this square and attack this pawn. So I'm going to win one of those pawns. And anyway, and if the knight goes to h5, that was a computer suggestion, then the bishop can go either here or here. It still likes bishop d2, picking up that. Yeah, I guess you want to get the outside pawn and then push the a pawn home, and that's the winning endgame. Instead, I simplified a step too far by taking off the knight, and this is actually a losing endgame if black plays this correctly, because well, the 3 pawns over here are stronger than the bishop, and unfortunately my pawns are blocked up. Black's pawns are on dark squares, so I can't ever get counterplay with these pawns without bringing my king over. That's what I need to do, is I need to bring my king over to that side of the board, and he can keep my king occupied by pushing his pawns forward, and my bishop can't do anything over here, and the pawns can't queen themselves. So so this should be a win for black, and you know, this is a good time to pause and think whenever you have a transformation like this into another piece has gone in the endgame. You have a different situation, and you should stop to think about what your plan is. Let's see. Well, it's my move here. I went king to g4, which is okay. So anyway, black's plan to win from this position is to play f5. Start those pawns rolling immediately, but with the second idea, which is to make it more difficult for my king to come over to this side of the board, because his king steps forward with king f6. And now I can't go to this square And it's not so easy for me to get around to this square. I have to walk around like this. And in the meantime, these pawns come forward. So, for example, king here, g5, king here, g4. This is if I go for the counterplay, king c4. And if the king sits over here, black can just gradually push them forward. So this is really my only try. He can push these pawns forward. I can take here. Let's see, he brings his king forward to keep my king out from this side. I can bring my bishop in. Let's see, he can push on. And basically, this is going to turn into a race where I'm going to try and push these pawns forward and push this c pawn forward, help it queen with my king. But his pawns are going to be faster. He's going to be able to sacrifice one or two of these to win my bishop and get a queen first. So black should win that endgame. Instead, he played h6. And after just one or two moves, I have a winning game here. I think already, I think that was really a critical position. Already I'm fine, and he no longer has these winning chances because now I'm getting over to the queen side with my king. See, he came over here. I go king e4, went king e6, and I go bishop c4 check. And that was, at least I spotted that idea. He can't, well, if he backs up to defend the pawn, then I will come forward with my king, and now I'm winning the race here. I'm mopping up these pawns over here, and these pawns are coming through quicker than he can advance his kingside pawns. So it's all very tight timing here. Let's see, he tried king d6, but then I can win in another way, which is also kind of instructive. Let's see, he went g5, and I went bishop to h5. And this is the idea. He's got two extra pawns here, but I've got them blockaded, so they can never really move. And then I can just run him out of moves. So let's see. Oh, he went king e6. So I just push this pawn forward. Cancel that. I played bishop g4 check first. Sorry. He goes here. And then I push the pawn forward. He goes here to stay in touch with his pawns. I step forward to my king. The point is I always have extra tempo moves with my bishop. Things are blocked up over here, so his king is not getting through, and I'll be able to win these pawns and queen one of them. So he resigned at this point. Anyway, it was a terrible game, but maybe there were some good lessons for you, and I will see you again soon. Bye.